Hello, I am Charles Darwin, an English naturalist and known for developing the theory of evolution by natural selection. Here are some facts about me. My daughter died. She was only 10 years old. My wife is a Christian. I never understood that. I have been afraid to present the theory of human evolution for 20 years. I have been sick most of my life. All facts are truth. I am ashamed of some things, and some things almost destroyed me. However, it is an integral part of my life. It proves that famous people have the same problems and life challenges as everyone else. Now all about it in more detail. Section 1. My daughter died. She was only 10 years old. Ah, Annie, my sweet Annie, how can I put into words the depth of a wound so cruel, so raw? A father's heart is not meant to be torn in such a way, but life, that relentless and indifferent force, has a way of delivering blows that shatter the soul. She was my light, my joy, the very spark that brightened the dark corners of my world. A child, full of laughter, of questions, each one more profound than the last. Her eyes, those innocent eyes, would stare up at me with wonder, as if I were the one who held the answers to all things, to the mysteries of the world. But I had no answer for her when the sickness came. Do you know the feeling of helplessness that seeps into your bones when you can do nothing? Nothing. You search for a cure, grasp at every hope, yet the illness is a shadow that grows larger with each passing day. Tuberculosis, they said. A slow, insidious thief that stole her breath, her vitality. And with it, my peace. It took her, as death always takes, without mercy, without consideration for those left behind. I remember the last moments, as if they happened but a breath ago. The room was cold, and yet she burned with fever. I held her little hand in mine, her frail fingers trembling like the wings of a bird about to take flight. "Papa," she whispered. Oh, how I longed to hear that word once more, just once more. "Papa, don't be sad." But how could I not be sad? How could I not weep for the child I had nurtured, the child I had hoped would outlive me, who would carry on my name, my work, my legacy? When she passed, it was as though the world went still. Time itself seemed to halt in its tracks, and for a moment, I was lost in a void. The weight of it. It presses upon me still, a burden that I carry in silence. I've written of it, I've studied the wonders of nature, of the evolving species that have graced this earth, but none of my discoveries could fill the hollow left in my heart. Not the finches of the Galapagos, nor the sweeping grandeur of natural selection. I remember the days following her death. I could not write, could not think. The words, they fled from me, as if they too understood that the mind could not carry the weight of such sorrow. My mind, how could it ever be clear again when my heart was so clouded with grief? Some say it is the nature of a man of science to distance himself from such emotions, to bury the personal beneath the weight of reason and logic. But how could I? How could I dismiss the ache of a father who has lost his child? The very thing that brought life and joy to my existence was gone. No scientific theory, no theory of evolution, could explain this. For grief does not follow logic. It follows the heart, which beats with the rhythm of loss, ever aching. And even now, as I stand before you, the years have not healed the wound. No, the wound is deep, my friends. It remains within me, part of me, like an unspoken prayer for a daughter I will never see again in this life. How foolish we are, to think that life can be reasoned, that we can control the forces that shape us. How little we understand the true power of love, and the agony of its absence. Annie was my joy, and my sorrow. But, oh, how I loved her. Even now, in my old age, I carry that love with me, like a flame in the dark. I only wish I could have been the father she deserved, and yet, I feel I failed her in so many ways. That guilt, it too is a companion now, one I carry quietly, like a shadow that never leaves. And so, I remain, a man of science, but also a man of grief. My work, my theories, they cannot absolve me. For there is no explanation, no formula that can bring back my dear Annie. She is lost to me now, forever. And in that loss, I find myself adrift on a sea of questions to which there is no answer. A pause, as Darwin looks into the distance, lost in thought, before slowly shaking his head. Oh, Annie, my sweet, sweet Annie, may you rest in peace. Section 2, My wife is a Christian. I never understood that. How curious, this thing we call marriage. When I first met Emma, she was the beacon of light in my life, a woman of warmth, of faith, of devotion. In many ways, she was everything I wasn't. I was a man of science, driven by observation and inquiry, while she was a woman who found peace in belief, in the comfort of a divine order. In her, I saw a conviction that I could never fully grasp. And yet, I married her. I remember the vows we exchanged, standing together, hearts full of hope, believing that love could bridge any divide. But what of the divides we cannot see, the ones that grow quietly within the heart? What of the rift that begins when you question the very foundation of the world in which your partner finds solace? Emma, my dear Emma, who had been raised in the certainty of Christian faith, her every prayer a whisper to God, her every action guided by the belief in a higher power. She was not just my wife, she was my anchor, a constant in a world that I, as a man of science, sought to understand and unravel. And yet, the more I uncovered, the more I felt that my worldview, a world without a personal God in the way she envisioned, was slipping from my grasp. I could no longer ignore it. My discoveries, the finches of the Galapagos, the slow evolution of species, the gradual unfolding of life on Earth, it all pointed to a different truth than the one Emma held dear. How could I reconcile what I saw with the world she had known? How could I, the man who had come to question the existence of a divine hand in the shaping of life, look her in the eyes and tell her the truth? In those quiet moments, when the house was still, I would feel a tug at my heart, knowing that our hearts were no longer in perfect harmony. She spoke often of her faith, her prayers, her trust in God's plan. And I could not speak my truth to her, not fully. How could I? How could I bear to tell the woman I loved that I was not the man she thought I was? That the very questions I sought to answer through my work had, in fact, pulled me farther from her faith? You see, I never set out to reject her beliefs. That was never my intention. I loved her, and in loving her, I respected the path she had chosen. I never meant to shake her faith, to make her question the very core of who she was. But the more I studied, the more I realized that my journey down the path of knowledge had led me to a place where religion and science could not walk hand in hand. How could I explain to her that my work on the origin of species was not a direct assault on her faith, but a discovery of nature's infinite complexity, a grandeur that spoke for itself? How could I express my own agnosticism, the space between belief and disbelief, where I found myself standing, uncertain yet in awe of the natural world, but unable to find the divine I had once been taught to seek? The tension between us grew, silently, steadily, until it began to shape our days. I could see it in her eyes, the sadness, the worry that something was slipping away. She would ask, "But Charles, how do you explain the love we share, the beauty of the world, the purpose behind all that we see?" And I would hold her hand, searching for an answer that would not hurt her, that would not diminish her sense of peace. But in truth, I had no answer that could comfort her, for my own heart had begun to doubt. I remember one particular evening, after a long silence had passed between us, Emma asked me why I no longer prayed. I was silent, not out of defiance, but out of a deep, painful indecision. I wanted to speak the truth. I no longer believed, Emma, I no longer had faith in the God of my youth. But I love you, and I would never wish to wound your spirit. How could I say such a thing without shattering everything between us? It was in those moments of silence that I felt the weight of my choices, the weight of my discoveries that had changed me, that had separated me from the world I once knew. Science, with its cold, relentless pursuit of truth, had shaped my thoughts, my life. But it had also built a wall between me and my wife. And I, the man of reason, the man who sought to understand everything, found myself helpless against the one thing that truly mattered, her heart. Emma was a woman who found comfort in faith, a faith that had guided her through her life. She believed in a divine purpose, a plan, and for her, that faith was as certain as the ground beneath her feet. How could I, who had once been so sure in my belief, but had now fallen into uncertainty, live up to the promises of our marriage without breaking her heart? And so, I lived in the shadow of my own silence. I never rejected her faith. Never. But I couldn't embrace it, not in the way she wished me to. In the end, I think we both suffered in our own way. She, with her faith unchanged but knowing the man she loved was slipping further from it. And I, with my scientific mind always searching, always questioning, and finding no answer that could ease the tension between us. Love, I've come to understand, is not always enough to bridge the gaps that life sets before us. We find our ways together, but sometimes those ways diverge, and we are left walking on different paths, even as our hearts remain intertwined. Darwin pauses, his face a mask of quiet sorrow, before he slowly turns, as if to leave the room, his voice almost a whisper. Perhaps it is not the answers we seek, but the questions themselves that bind us. And in that, there is a certain peace. Section 3, I have been afraid to present the theory of human evolution for 20 years. What is the price of truth? I have spent countless years, 20, in fact, treading the line between knowledge and silence. 20 years of restless nights, of scribbled thoughts, of agonizing self-doubt. And yet, as I sit here, before the fruits of my labor, I find myself paralyzed by a singular fear: what if I am wrong? What if I am not the harbinger of a new understanding, but a fool who dares to disturb the delicate order of the world? It is not the weight of the evidence, no, I am convinced of my findings, but the weight of the world itself. The world that waits for me, breathlessly, on the other side of this door. The world that clings to its beliefs, its dogmas, its sacred certainties. I, too, once stood with them, wrapped in the comforting cloak of tradition, of creation as set forth in the Scriptures. But now, I know better. The earth is older than the Bible would have us believe. Life is not a finished work, a perfect design, but a process, a slow, methodical unfolding, shaped by time and the imperceptible hands of nature. I have learned this truth through years of patient study. The finches of the Galapagos, the fossils etched in stone, the delicate architecture of life itself, they all speak of a world in flux, in perpetual change. The idea of evolution, that species change over time through natural selection, has taken root in me, as surely as the very rocks beneath our feet. But the world is not ready. What if they laugh at me? What if the world I have known, my colleagues, the people who have supported me, trusted me, turn their backs, disgusted by my heresy? I am but a man, a flawed, imperfect man. I fear that once the words are spoken, I cannot take them back. The theory of evolution, such a claim, such a disruption to the natural order. What will my peers say? What will the church say? What will my own family think, as I dare to touch upon the very nature of life, of our Creator? The fear gnaws at me, like 1,000 biting insects. I see their faces, the disapproval in their eyes, the whispers behind closed doors. I hear the sermons, the voices raised in anger, the promises of damnation. The world has always feared change, and I am about to bring change to its very core. How can I be certain, when the cost of my certainty is so great? Emma, my dear Emma, how I wish I could make her understand. How I long for her peace, her trust. But I see the worry in her eyes, too. She, a woman of faith, who believes in the divine plan, who holds her beliefs so dear. What will she think of me, of my work? Will she feel betrayed by the very man she has loved for so long? How can I speak of this, knowing the pain it might cause? But then, I must. For I cannot undo what I have seen, cannot ignore the evidence that lies before me. No matter how much it tears at my soul, I know that the truth must be told, for the sake of science, for the sake of mankind, for the sake of the generations who will follow. They will not thank me, I am certain. They will curse me, perhaps. But they will also carry the torch forward, one day, when the dust has settled and the world has come to understand. I cannot remain silent forever. To wait any longer is to deny the truth of the natural world, to remain complicit in a lie. Yet, the fear remains. The thought of what I stand to lose, the respect of my peers, the love of my family, the very fabric of my identity as a scientist. These things I hold dear, yet they pale in comparison to the price of silence. The irony, the cruel irony. The man who once prided himself on logic, on reason, now stands trembling before the vast unknown of public reaction. I cannot escape the notion that in publishing my theory, I am committing an act of violence, not against men, but against the very foundations of their faith. And what if I am wrong? What if the whole world turns against me, laughing, mocking me for my arrogance? No, I tell myself, as I sit here in this stillness, I must move forward. I must speak. Perhaps, as the years pass, history will judge me kindly. Perhaps, in time, the weight of my theory will be lifted from my shoulders, and my name will be remembered not for the controversy, but for the truth that I dared to speak. But today, I am a man torn between the need to speak and the fear of being heard. Today, I am a man who must choose between the love of a world that clings to old beliefs, and the irrevocable call of reason. And so, I wait, and I tremble, yet I know what must be done. Darwin exhales slowly, as if resigning himself to the inevitable. His hand finally reaches for the paper before him, his grip firm, his voice a whisper of conviction. The time has come. I must let it be known. Section 4. I have been sick most of my life. Illness has been my most faithful companion, more so than any friend, and far more constant than the seasons. For years, it has lingered at my side, tightening its grip on me with every passing day. My body, once eager to explore the wilds of distant lands, now betrays me at every turn. Ah, how cruel it is to live with a mind alight with curiosity, yet shackled to a body so prone to frailty. My stomach churns like the restless sea, though I have not set foot on a ship in decades. Fatigue drapes over me like a suffocating fog, dimming the hours I might have spent in study or discourse. And then, there are the darker days, the days when despair creeps in, whispering that my work, my life, is of little consequence. Isolation has become my refuge, though I did not choose it willingly. The gatherings of society, the lively debates, even the cheerful chaos of my children, it all feels too much. Too much noise, too much energy, too many expectations I cannot meet. And so, I retreat to this sanctuary of books and specimens, this quiet prison of my own making. Here, I am free to think, to write, to reflect, but I am also alone. Do they understand, my family, my friends? Do they see the battle I fight each day against this relentless affliction? I doubt it, for I rarely speak of it. What good would it do to burden them with my suffering? Better they see me as the steady figure at my desk, the devoted husband, the father with a ready smile. But the truth is, there are moments when I feel as though I am fading away, a shadow of the man I once was. And yet, even in this state, I press on. For what else is there to do? My work is a light in the darkness, a beacon that draws me forward when my strength fails me. The theory of evolution, the great unfolding of life's mysteries, it is my lifeline, my purpose. When the pain is sharpest, I remind myself of the finches on the Galapagos, the fossils buried deep in the earth, the intricate beauty of the natural world. These wonders sustain me when nothing else can. But still, there is a loneliness that no scientific discovery can assuage. I miss the camaraderie of my younger days, the thrill of sharing ideas with minds as curious as my own. I miss the laughter of friends, the warmth of human connection. Even my dear Emma, how patient she is, how steadfast, but there are parts of my heart she cannot reach, parts that remain locked away, weighed down by this persistent malady. Sometimes, I wonder if my work is worth the toll it has taken. My health, my relationships, my very spirit, have I sacrificed too much? But then, I think of the generations to come, the minds that will build upon my ideas, the truths that will emerge from the seeds I have sown. If my suffering serves a greater purpose, then perhaps it is not in vain. He pauses, his gaze turning inward, his voice softening. Still, I long for peace. Not the peace of death, no, not yet, but the peace of a body at rest, a mind untroubled. I long for the simple joy of walking without pain, of sitting in a garden without feeling the weight of fatigue. I long to live, truly live, before my time is done. But until that day comes, if it ever does, I will remain here, in this study, with my books and my thoughts. I will endure, as nature itself endures, adapting to whatever trials it must face. And I will hope that, in the end, this life, with all its pain and isolation, will have been worth the journey.